So what we're going to do today is we are going to expand our knowledge of adding fonts into the program by actually making it appear like our writing is in 3 dimensions. So there isn't actually a 3-dimensional writing option, but what we can do is we can utilize different concepts in computer programming to make it appear like our writing is actually 3-dimensional. So that's what we'll be working on today. So there are actually 2 strategies to do this. One uses multiple vectors, which we'll work on first, and the second one uses a for loop. And those of you who have seen a for loop before, we'll see how this applies and allows us to create 3-dimensional words very, very easily. So what I'd like you to do first is if you log into Visual Studio, create a program called Unit 6 Lesson 2 3-dimensional font. So that's what we'll be working on today. And then once you have that all set, what I'd like you to do is unpause the video and we'll move forward. So at this point, you should have Unit 6 Lesson 2 3D font created. The other thing that I would like you to do is open up the Monogame pipeline. So remember, if you don't know where that is, if you go into the application window and under Computer Science, you see Monogames, click on that and it will open up the window. Now, something to be aware of is that this program will not automatically connect it to your new projects. What you need to do each and every time you use the pipeline is you need to connect it to your current project. So File, Open. You'll notice here it automatically started me somewhere. I want to make sure that I'm going into my project. So I go into my name, Visual Studio 2015, Projects. And then if I click on Date Modified again, remember it brings mine to the top. So I can see Unit 6, Lesson 2, 3-dimensional font. I click Open, open it up, go into the Content folder, and connect it to the pipeline. So you'll see a change here, and then I can double check and see that it is connected to my folder by hovering over that location piece. So from here, I want to add a font into my program. So I right click on Content, do Add New Item. I'm going to do a Sprite font, and this time I'm going to use the Chiller font. So I'm going to use Chiller, press OK, I can see it's in here. And then just to be safe, I'm going to right click and press Rebuild. And I can see that my build was in fact successful. So at this point, I can minimize my pipeline, come over here into my actual program, right click on Content, do Add Existing Item, go into the Content folder, make sure that I can view all files, and open and bring Chiller into my program. Now, remember, this just creates a generic font, and then we actually need to update it. So if you double click on Chiller, it will open up the details on Chiller. Notice that it defaults to font. So if I want to use the Chiller font, I actually need to use that as my font name. And here, I want it to have a size slightly bigger. Let's do maybe 40. And from here, I'm going to leave the rest the same, but remember, you can add in additional instructions if you would like. So now I'm just going to save my program. I'm going to open up the game, and here I'm just going to get it to write something to the screen once. So here I know that I'm going to need a Sprite font object, and I'm going to call this Chiller because that is my actual font that I'm using. I also know that I'm going to need a vector2 object, and now this is just going to be a vector that says hello. So for this, I'm just going to call it my hello vector, but I have my font and I'll have my vector location. Then from here, I need to initialize my vector2 object. So I do vector2, well, not vector2, excuse me. I need the name of my vector, which is hello, and I'm going to have a new vector2 object, and I'm going to call, or I'm going to put that at the location 100, 30. Now, if you don't like just calling it hello, what you can do is you could say, this is my vector for hello. So call it hello vector, and call this one hello vector. To be honest with you, that's what I do the majority of the time. So I know that that's a vector that has a specific type of text in it. So I use hello vect to help me out. Now from here, I also need to load my Sprite font into my program. So I'm going to take my Chiller Sprite font object and load in this. The content folder, I'm going to load in a Sprite font object. And if I look over to the side, I can see that I named it Chiller. So in quotations, I'm going to put Chiller. And from here, I want to make sure that it gets drawn to my screen. So here, I can draw it to my screen by using spritebatch.begin. sprite, not capitalized, but lowercase, sprite batch dot end. And then from here, I can do sprite batch dot draw string. Remember, I'm going to have my chiller font. I need to put my text in. So this is just going to say hello. I'm going to use my hello vector location, and I'm going to use color dot purple. You can use any color that you would like. So now if I test out my program, what I should see is the word hello written at its location in a different font with purple writing. So I can see that right on my screen. So now my goal is to write this in 3 dimensions. So the first strategy that you can use is we can use multiple vectors. So what you can do is you can rewrite this text multiple times. That's how you make it appear 3-dimensional. So we could rewrite it once, twice, 3 times to kind of amplify that 3-dimension effect. So here we're going to create multiple vectors. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the original vector to change the location of this new vector. So we can access the previous vector's x and y parameters. We've talked about how we can access those characteristics of that object. And what we're going to do is we're going to purposefully, you can see it right here, name and locate this second vector to be our current vector's location plus 1, our current vector's location plus 1. So if I come into here, I'm going to add in a couple more vectors. So here, let's add in another vector2 object. I'll call this hello vector1. So I can add in another component. I'll add in another one called hello vector2. And then I'll add in a third one called hello vector3. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rewrite these so that they kind of start jumping out and making the word appear as if it is in 3 dimensions. So I have 4 vectors here that I'm going to write hello multiple times on the screen in a slightly different location. So now if I come down here to hello vector, I'm going to now do hello vect1, and this is going to be a new vector2 object as well. But what we're going to do here is instead of using numbers, we're going to use the characteristics of the original hello vector. So we have hello vect dot the x coordinate plus 1. Hello vect dot the y coordinate plus 1. So what this will do is wherever this vector is, it will add 1 to it. So it will add, this will be 101 and this will be 31. And the reason we would do this is because it allows us to move this vector around and not have to relocate these every time. So if we wanted to move this over 50 pixels, we would only have to change this to be 150 and it would automatically move this to 151. So it makes it a little bit easier to edit and alter our program down the road. Now we're going to do the same thing with vector, this should have been vector 1, sorry about that. This one should be vector 2. So this one I'm going to add 2 and 2. And if I do this again, this one will be 3, and it will add 3 and 3. So this will create 4 vectors and give them a location. Now, if we have these 4 vectors, we also need to be drawing them to the screen. So we'll need to copy and paste this code down here as well. So you have hello vector, that will be 1, hello vector 2, and hello vector 3. So what we're essentially doing is we are writing the same thing to the screen 4 different times. We're writing the exact same message, but in a slightly different location so that it will write it multiple times and give it that 3-dimensional effect. Now, if I press start, what you will see is that it appears thicker, which is kind of cool. Now, if you want to add in a really good 3-dimensional effect, what most people will do is that final one, they'll change to a different color. So maybe we'll change that to be pink. And what it will do is it will make that value look like it has a shadow. So you can see that it has the pink on top and then it has the purples behind. And remember, it draws these in the order that you draw them. So you want that pink one, if you want it to appear like it has a shadow, you want the pink one to be last so that it's drawn on the very, very top. That's kind of the idea behind it. So shadow, 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 and the actual hello. So again, to show you one more time, you can see how it appears to have that 3-dimensional shadow because we've drawn it multiple times. So at this point, you can go and complete the assignment for this particular video. And then in the second video, I'll show you a second strategy for actually making 3-dimensional words.